is happening all across the world. And as we take a minute of silence, trying to dedicate this sincerity to all 10 directions in the world, I think it is indeed time for us to reflect. Today is a very good day to reflect because it's a very special day. It's February 29th, and that means it only happens once every 4 years, and what we call the leap year. So imagine that it took, and for some of you, probably you know this more in depth, okay? But for us layman terms, we know that the distance that the Earth travels around the sun marks about 365 days. That's what we call 1 year. That's where we had the 4 seasons. However, it is because it's not exactly 365 days. It's actually 365 and a quarter day, or roughly about a quarter. And that is why every 4 years, you have to account for that additional day, that additional quarter day that you didn't take into account. So a quarter times 4 is 1. So every 4 years, that's accumulated to 366 days. And that's what today is. So can you imagine that? And this is very much not just science, not just, the study of the planets or astronomy or earth science. It's more of the truth, the principle, in that eventually when you accumulate, everything will pile up eventually. It will all eventually pile up. You accumulate enough days and moments, it will eventually becomes 1 day, 1 full day. Because if you don't account for that, then you're gonna be 1 day off every 4 years. And imagine after 1 million years, then you'll be millions and millions of days off. Then it'll be horrible. Then summer will not be summer, etc. So I think it's important to also observe today as the February 29th is a very special day. So let us move on to our review for today. Thank you all for coming on the Saturday and having our review. Having all of you online, it's just like a family gathering. Every week we would gather, and this is the safest. We don't have to worry about spreading coronavirus according to if we're doing this online. Now, even though we're still sitting right next to each other, we still have to be careful, okay? And that's something that Master wants everybody to also be reminded of. Okay, so last week we talked about the passcodes of life. Very briefly talking about what we talked about. It's talking about the passcodes of life. It's not really unlocking, the another new life. No, it's about the passcodes that exist in between people. It's talking about the lock that we have that exists within our hearts. And therefore, the communication is very difficult because it's not because we don't understand the words. It's because our hearts are locked, are closed. And who holds the key? Who holds the passcode? If you can unlock yourself or you can unlock other people, then you can open the heart, in which case the communication will become easier. In which case, when you open your heart, then the wisdom and knowledge will be able to flow into you more willingly. Just like when other people were talking about, I am interested in doing this. When they're interested, then they will be more willing to learn. They will be more willing to do. But if they're not interested, then they're less willing to learn and less willing to do. And that interested is exactly about opening the lock of the heart. So Master, last week we talked about how Master is talking about opening the path and building the bridge. The bridge is to bridge the gap and paving the path. So then the two people or two entities where there is a gap in between, you either need to build a bridge or you can pave the path so that the two parts can be discussed, can discuss and communicate. This is the same thing as people. you have to build a bridge or pave the path the same way that you decipher and decode the passcode. If you can't open the lock, then there is no way for you to even begin paving the path. And that is what Master was talking about. That and so building the bridge out of nothing, paving the path when there is a gap, it's talking about the extracting the wondrous existence within the emptiness. Before the bridge was built, before the road was paved, there would be nothing there. And I think it's very important that that is what Master is trying to refer to according to IT, but in a higher sense, letting us know there's more meanings beyond that. And so, between people interaction, it's the same thing. If the numbers and the passcodes don't line up correctly, then there is no pathway. The door is still locked. You can't go through. And therefore, if the numbers and the passcodes are lined up and match correctly, then the pathway to the true principles would be completed. And that means you are now the path, the bridge will be able to open, the road will be able to pave. So it's something that we talked about last week briefly. Okay, I think this topic is much more than just people talking. It's talking about the passcode of life, communication with people, and imagine that talking to each other, right? If you don't open the lock, if you're talking to me, but my heart is locked or entangled in something else, then you can talk all you want. You can speak the true principles to me. You can be master, or you can be the holiest or the smartest and the wisest person in the world. But if my heart is not open, then I would not be able to learn anything. And how many times did you remember of bringing your children to Jingsi Hall and only to have them wander around because they don't feel the same way that you do? You feel that you want them to learn something, but they just aren't in it because their hearts is not open yet. But then you also remember, for those of you that have tried and achieved, you also see the joy when their hearts are open. The children, their hearts are open. They're willing to accept and they're willing to learn. And that is when they're able to learn the most, because they're willing to learn and they're willing to accept. And I think this is what this passcode of life is talking about. You know, it's very, very different, very, very difficult. And furthermore, I think if you can go a little bit deeper, it's not even just about the hearts, but it's also about the language. You know, that sometimes, just like you guys, all of you, right? Most of you speak English and not Taiwanese or Chinese. It's very difficult to understand. But as soon as the lock in your heart, or as soon as the road is paved, then it's not about whether you understand the language, but it's about whether you understand the hearts and the mind and the soul of Master. And I think that is very, very important. So that's the passcode of life that we talked about last week. And so this week, and so this is what Master was still talking about. Going back to last week, this is what Master was talking about. The pathway to the heart is the most important, because if it's blocked, then everything will be stuck. And so hopefully that our minds work the same way. Hopefully it's unlocked and it doesn't have to have all these knocks at the same time. So this week, what are we going to talk about? Yeah, very good. We're going to continue with this passcode of life, part 2 and part 3. And what does that mean? It means we're going to talk about more of this passcode stuff, and 2 parts. And we're going to get to that very quickly. And first and last part is, which path do we take? You don't know which path yet because you don't know why I'm asking, but very soon you'll find out why, okay? So let's move on to the first thing that we're going to talk about today, which is continuing last week's talk about the passcode, but we're moving on to the next part. Okay, so contemplation, right? So we talked about this passcode of life, and we talk about its communication between people, whether it's the same language or different language, right? Whether it's same race or ethnicity or nationality or religion, right? It's all the same, right? It's all still just a communication. If the first thing that you hear me talk about is Buddhism, and you yourself is of a different religion or of atheist or agnostic, the moment you hear me talk about Buddhism, you'll be like shutting yourself off. So it doesn't matter what I say after that, you shut off, right? Could be. Not everybody is like that. But it's the same thing. So we're talking about the communication between people, okay, and across boundaries and building a gap. But does this passcode only exist among humanity, between each person to another person? And you know that the way that I'm asking this question, you know that my answer is already saying no. It's not just in the humanity, right? It's, excuse me, sorry. So it's not just in between the humanity, but it's actually more than that. So there was a chance encounter, and this took place for Tang Meiyun, who's the actress who actually went to Malaysia too to talk about her filming as the great masters, Dharma master series, and we call her Tang Lao Si, and she's been doing this for a while, and so she came back one day in January, and she shared with Master about a chance encounter while she was filming. So she said while she was filming in Japan, an interesting interaction happened between humans and deer, the deer, the animal deer. And so what was the encounter? She said that most of the deers around the temple, they don't have antlers, okay? No, most of them don't have the antlers. But there was one. No, there was one deer in particular that had the antler, okay? So she just saw this deer, and the behavior is very different. So while the little ones and the ones without, they're all freely roaming around, okay? They're going to interact with the tourists, and they're seeking for food, right? Cookies, crackers, etc. And so this one is different. The one with antler is always standing high and looking around. It's almost on sentry, like looking around, making sure that no one is making any sudden movements. There's no sudden risk and danger. So this is always looking around. And after a while, when the people have earned his trust, then he will be more easily walking around, prancing, and maybe interacting with others and things like that. So you will see that this deer with antler, the one that seems to be in charge, okay, is very much observing and caring and guarding. Okay, so the actress Meiyun, Tang Meiyun Lao Si, reminisced to Master about the past memories. And what did she talk? What did she think? She thought about back in 2012. Okay, back in 2012. And there was an episode, and this was back then before the Great Master series, when this series was about the Bodhi heart and the Bodhi wisdom, and the Bodhi wisdom of the Samadhi or of the Zen, okay? And this was a story about the deer king. And for those of you that are familiar, that are not familiar with the story, you could seek out others next to you, which might know about the story more in completeness. Okay, for those of you that know the story, please do take the opportunity later to explain to them what the story was about. And if there's no one that knows about the story, then fear not, because you can always go on YouTube to find this story, because it's already 2012. Okay, so 8 years ago. So this was what she was reminiscing, right? So she herself played the role of the deer king, the king that would overlook all the deers and making sure that the best interest of the deer group, the pack, was there and protected. That's the role of the dear king, okay? So all of a sudden, she was thinking to herself. She was thinking to remembering and saying that, hey, that deer acted like the role of the deer king. And I was also playing the role of the deer king. And there's sort of a communication that happened right there, right? So the actress, and also eventually we call her Tzu Hong. Okay, that's her Dharma name. Tzu Hong actually said that she realized that that's the role she played, and she knew that. So she realized that all of a sudden, there's a moment of enlightenment, right? So she said, so that proves that all sentient beings have this Buddha nature. We all have this innate Buddha nature, right? And we thought that they don't know how to speak. But in reality, they have all the ranges of emotion, right? They have all their likes and dislikes and everything just like us, okay? It's not that they don't know how to speak. It's not that they don't know how to talk, but rather it's that because we don't understand what they're saying. So even when the ants, so this is what Master is talking about. So Master is talking about this now, right? So Master after Tzu Hong, Sister Tzu Hong shared this, Master replied, it's not that they don't know how to talk, it's because we don't understand what they're saying. Even when the ants get together, when they meet and stop for a moment, they're communicating as well, okay? So so Master said, all sentient beings have the same innate Buddha nature. They live and communicate just like us, but we just don't understand them. It's just a different realm, but Dharma still exists in all these realms. Dharma can be preached to ants or any other animals. Okay, so Master is using this opportunity to let more people, that everybody know about, even though that we're in different realms, even though that we don't know what they're talking about or we don't hear them, they are still communicating. They are living just like us. They have all these emotions. So obviously, this passcode, okay, this passcode isn't just about human beings, right? Humanity, but it's also about us communicating with animals. So many times we mistaken void with nothing. What is void? Void is nothingness. That's what you would say. If you look at the dictionary, that might be what it says. But the most important part is void isn't nothing. The fact that we can't hear it doesn't mean that there is no sound. The fact that we don't hear them talk doesn't mean that they aren't talking. Maybe they're talking in a different way. Maybe they're communicating in a different way. So one is void, is we can't hear. Nothing is that they aren't communicating. So we can't hear doesn't mean that they aren't communicating. Void is not the same as nothing. Okay, so that's where the passcode comes in, right? Someone will be talking to you, and then you'll be like, someone, like a teacher was, maybe Master was talking, and then you'll be sitting there, you'll be listening, right? And someone would ask you afterwards, maybe you go home, right? And your husband or your wife or your children will be asking you, so you spent a lot of time today at Tzu Chi. What did you learn, right? If you didn't pay attention, you'll probably be like, oh, it's the same day. We just did this and did that. There's really nothing different. Practically, it's a very normal day, right? So that would be very similar to nothing. But a normal day is void. But in there's so many little things that happen. It's not nothing. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say is that there's always something there. Just like the Dharma is in the void. The fact that we can't see it or we're not touched with it doesn't mean that it's not there, but rather it just means that we aren't hearing it. Okay, so but if we can't sense it, how do we know that it's there? How do we know for sure? Right? I mean, is it because only Master said it's there, so it's there? How do we know that it's there, right? How do we know? So the passcode of life is not just about between people. It's about unlocking so that we can feel and we can sense it. But if we can't, how do we feel and sense it? How? If we don't hear the animals talking, then how do we become listening? How do we listen to them? How do we become aware that they're talking? How do we know that it's there? Let's move on to the next part, which I think, move on to the next part, part 3. So we know that there are different paths and different pathways between humans and humans, and also humans and animals and sentient beings, right? Even though we don't speak the same language, but I think it's there. We don't hear it, but I think it's there. We don't understand it, but we believe it's there. But how do you know? How do you know? So this is Master's Dharma talk, and I wanted to get to this. I want to get to this so that we can all understand. So Master said, with all the disasters in the world, and this is very much like what we did at the beginning part, right? All these disasters in the world, really need to start thinking about this. And so Master was talking about every day. Master is very apprehensive, always thinking that the heart is almost hanging in midair, and very apprehensive, and also feel very helpless. And she said, this is already beyond what we can do, and we must be sincere and vigilant. So what that means is, Master always talking about the forces of nature, the forces of the bigger world is so much more than what we humans said that we could do. Like humanity always said that we can change the world, but the world is much bigger than the things that we can change. So Master is saying that this is already bigger than, beyond what we humanity can do. The only thing we can do now is be sincere and vigilant. And she said, if it is out of our power, we can only pray, and we must pray with utmost sincerity. Now, if you only block this part, you would think that Master is being very, very, very pessimistic and very, very, very passive. And for a lot of you, you might think, whoa, how can this be? Master is talking about Buddhism in action, right? How can it be saying that the only thing that we do is pray? So please don't take this out of context. This is only one part, the beginning of this paragraph, okay? So Master said, if it's out of our power, we can only pray, and we must pray with utmost sincerity. And if we are not sincere, we cannot reach into the heavens, okay? So pray, and it must be very sincere. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So this time, the forces of karma is indeed very powerful, and nothing can stop it. Now we need everyone to be utmost sincere. How do we do that? By refraining from killing. So Master is transforming the idea of helplessness, the idea that the nature is so much bigger than us, that there's nothing that we can do. But it's transforming that into, we must pray. Okay, how do you pray? By being very sincere. How do you be sincere? By refrain from killing. By taking steps, actions. By taking active measures to show that you are sincere. By making changes. By making very little changes. Changing the affliction. Removing all the bad habits. Say the good words. Think the good thoughts. And do the good deeds. These are the signs, the changes, the refrain from killing. Don't eat the lives. Don't take the lives. By doing all these, you are showing your sincerity. You are showing that you're helping every little bit. Maybe this bigger nature is out of our control, but we can control ourselves, and every little bit of every little thing counts, because it shows your sincerity. It shows that you care. It shows that you're not just talking about it, but you're willing to do something about it. So Master said, everyone must put in the effort. Everyone must be sincere and vigilant. We must also promote vegetarian diet. So it's not just about pray. Pray itself is not enough. You need to be sincere. And how do you be sincere? By taking actions. By doing things that you need to do, by doing things that It's right to do. So we must also promote, not just yourself, but promote this vegetarian diet. This is the most basic requirement for sincerity. You know, she's changing that. Changing, yes, we're powerless. The only thing we do is pray and sincerity. And how do you be sincere? By being the very basic thing, the very basic requirement is you have got to be not taking lives when you eat. To mitigate these disasters, you must start by the most basic requirement is to be, for sincerity, is to not take lives. Okay? So Master said further, so every step of the way, she's increasing that strength, even though she says she was helpless, but she knows what she needs to do. Please relay my message to everyone and spread the message wide and far. Even if it's just a drop of water against a burning hot plate, single drops of water will still do its part to bring down the temperature. So this is completely reversed to say, I am helpless. She's relaying this message, the idea that you can do something about it, the idea that this is something that can be done and should be done. And everybody, we should do this, okay? So just think about all this. Master is calling out to all of us to spread this message and to be sincere and vigilant. This is all very good. This is all very good. And especially nowadays, right, with all the disasters that's happening. And not just that, right, the coronavirus that's happening and it's quickly spreading. You know, last week, right now, we're not talking about Korea is having all these coronavirus problems yet. We're not talking about Iran. We're not talking about Italy. Not yet. It's just ballooned. It's almost like exploded. All these people, all these confirmed cases began to show up. It's so fast. It's like, you know, snowballing so fast that it's beyond our ability to stop it. So doesn't this part of Dharma talk make you think that, yes, when it becomes so fast and so big and coming so strong, it is already beyond our power to stop it. That's why Master said she was apprehensive, right? She felt helpless because she couldn't stop this. But we need to pray, sincerely pray. And not just sincerely pray, but do something to show our sincerity. How do you do that? The most basic requirement is to refrain from killing. So Master is calling this out to all of us. Not just you, but you have to spread this message wide and far. Let anyone that you know, everyone that you know should hear you talk about this. And if they believe you, then they need to talk about this to everyone that they know. That's what Master is calling out. Except this talk was given on January 12th. That was before the world knows the new coronavirus, COVID-19. January 12th. Yes, it's already happening in China, but the world doesn't know it yet. And it wasn't that serious yet. It hasn't been that. There were cases confirmed beginning last year, 2019, December. Suspected cases already happened in Wuhan, parts of the Wuhan. But this talk was given on January 12th. This was before coronavirus. Master was already calling out to everybody to be vegetarian. What was it for? It was for the forest fire in Australia. This talk, the one that I just talked about, the one that she was feeling helpless about, the one that she was talking about that this force is so much bigger than what we can do. The one that she talked about a single drop of water, we can still do this against a burning hot plate, even though it's gonna sizzle, burn up right away, become steams, but it will still do its part to bring down the temperature. That was given on January 12th, way before anybody outside of China knew about what's happening. And this was talking about a forest fire. And it was talking about all these forest fires that was happening in all parts of the world. If you remember last year, that's what we've been talking about. Remember all the forest fire, not just here, not just in Australia, but also in the United States, and also where? In Brazil, right? Yes, Brazil. And this is what Master talked about on January 12th. She said, Not just that day too, but she's been saying, I've always said, the lungs of the world are the trees and the rainforest. But just like that, they're destroyed. Do you see a eerily similarity between what Master talked about on the 12th of January and today? Yes. She was talking about the trees and the forest burning. She was talking about the trees and the forest are the lungs. And if you know what COVID-19 is, COVID-19 is the virus that attacks, that causes pneumonia. And what is pneumonia? Pneumonia is the inflammation of the lung. It's the inflammation of the lung where the lungs function cease to work. Lungs cease to function. So there were stories in Wuhan where there were people. The reporter goes into the hospital and all they see were people on oxygen tanks because their lungs are so weak that you need pure oxygen to pump into their lungs. And then for the more serious ones, you need to have the pressurized oxygen tank. So it's no longer just the tubes going in, it's the mask. It causes a negative temperature so that the oxygen will be by itself pumping the oxygen into your lung, because your lung can't expand, it can't contract and expand and try to take in the oxygen. It has to pump it in. They will try to do this for you so that you can live, to fight it. And if you can't fight it, then you just stop breathing. It's not because your lung is gone, it's because your lung cease to function. And why am I talking about this? Yes, it brings a chill down my spine to see the similarities, the eerily similarities that the world is facing when the lungs are destroyed to what we're seeing right now, when thousands of people are dying or they're contracting the disease, the virus that attacks their lungs. This is very, very much similar. So what are we thinking? The world is telling us many things. But are we hearing that? And if you don't hear it, do you feel it? The world is suffering, but do you hear it? And if you haven't heard it, maybe you need to feel it. Remember, Master once talked about the killing of animals and the pain and the agony, the hatred that's there. She was talking as if that's a human being. That's how we connect, right? So Master also talked about coexist with the world. Can you treat the world as a human being? If you can't, then maybe this pneumonia will make us understand how it feels when your lungs are burning up and being destroyed. That's the sounds and reactions of the world. It's not that they're not talking, it's that we're not listening. They're talking, but we're not listening. We have to listen. And that's why Master talks about tread carefully, step lightly, for the fear that the earth will feel the pain. Why does she say that? Because she can feel the pain. Not feel the pain, but feel the pain. What's the difference? She can feel it. She can hear it. She once said that she can hear the breathing of the earth. It's not that we can't hear it, it's that we choose to not hear it. And now we must hear it. Okay, so lastly, which part to take? Which path to take? This was the presentation done on the 27th. Thursday when Dai TV broadcaster, the weatherman, Dr. Peng, came back, and she did a presentation, and she said that now there are two paths ahead of us. One is the path of the fog, without knowing the direction for certain, and the other one is a path of entanglement without a clear way to sort out. So what Dr. Peng said was, even though that we are on the path of fog, even though we wouldn't know the direction, okay? But the path of entanglement, if we know the direction, then in time, we'll be able to sort it out. So that was his point. His point was, in the fog, there's no direction. That's the worst part. But even if you're entangled, then as long as you have a direction, you can have time to sort it out. So that's what he said. Obviously, Master being the master, she would counter whatever Dr. Peng said. So this is what Master said. Even though the path is filled with fog, even though that we know right next to the fog, right next to us, there's a cliff. Oh, now there's an added danger that wasn't talked about. So there was a cliff. And now we know that the fog will fall off. But Master said, as long as we're careful, plant our each steps firmly, we will know when we get close to the cliff. So it's almost like in the dark. This is what Master is saying, right? In the dark, even though we cannot see, but if you're careful, take each step at a time, right? Master always talk about this. She can't see very well, and she can't see the depth. So she can't see the steps. She's afraid that she's gonna fall. That's why she takes each step very carefully. Plant the step firmly before putting it on. So we will know. If we take every step very carefully, we will know when we get close to the cliff. Still, fog will one day disperse. However, if we are entangled, then there's no way out. We will be further entangled. And that is what, Zen masters always said. Entanglement, the more you entangle, the more that you're entangled, okay? In Chinese, these two words sound the same, entangle and Zen. But rather, we need to head toward liberation. Okay, so the contemplation, this is what we must do. It's carefully, with utmost sincerity, we can still sense and feel the cliff is near. And that's what Master is talking about. She's not telling us to become a language expert to speak to gorilla or animals. No, she's not talking about that, right? But if you care with utmost sincerity, you can sense and feel the animals. You can sense and feel the world. You can sense and feel the cliff. You can. You just have to try. You have to really care, then you will hear them, okay? We can hear and see the dangers by carefully observing and connecting ourselves to the world. You can see that, right? Months ago, we see the rainforest being attacked. And I think that's very important, okay? But that's only half the equation, because knowing isn't everything. If we're entangled, then even if we know the cliff is near, then we could still be dragged unwillingly to the cliff. So we need to be on the path of liberation. This is the second part. Knowing, we need to plant every foot correctly, but we need to start walking and plant foot correctly. And that's what Master was talking about. So that's my sharing for today. Sorry, I'm a little bit over time, but I hope that that what we can do is trying to connect ourselves to the world, trying to connect ourselves to the animals, trying to connect ourselves to each and individual. That is what's called the passcodes. And how do you do that? How do you break the passcode? How do you get the right passcode? You do that, okay, you do that by being utmost sincere, by careful, by really care to observe. Not just, oh yeah, I'm hearing you talk. No, I'm hearing them, the animals coming in. No, but observing them, seeing them, carefully watching them like you need, like you want to, like you really need to. And that's what Master has been doing observing the world, observing you and I, observing all the animals. And she saw by planting the foot very firmly, she can sense, she can feel what the world is saying to her. That's the passcodes of life. That's opening the path to communication. Thank you. That's my sharing for today. Thank you. And opening the floor up to the next share. Thank you.
Morning, brothers, Dharma brothers and sisters, and the masters. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Siew, my surname is Yap. I come from a very ordinary family with four siblings. Mom and dad are very simple people who doesn't have a lot of Dharma knowledge. They do pray to the Tin Sun and Tei Sun and Cheng Chi, meaning the ancestors, the Ji. Sorry, don't know how to interpret that into English.
It's Taoism.
Which is a bit more Taoism. So I have a very blessed childhood. Being a favorite of Dad, I get my way a lot of my times. So because of that, I am pretty self-centered and stubborn. Perhaps my home brother will add more to that. Mom and Dad has a small business which the children do help out as we stay above the shop that they operate in. Dad is a very peaceful person and generous and loving and a good giver to the children. So we grew up very happy and well looked after. How did I started my affinity with Tzu Chi? I have heard of Tzu Chi for a long time. Also because due to its wide publication on the natural disasters around the world. The very prominent one being the 2004 deadly Indian Ocean earthquake tsunami affecting 14 countries. Of course, our Malaysian infamous disappearance of flight MH37. All the brothers and sisters of Malaysian chapter were very prominent attending to the families of the victims. Also in 2014 and 15, when we had a major flood in the west coast of Peninsula, a lot of houses and property were destroyed. The west coast being mainly predominantly the Malay races had some resistance to Tzu Chi initially, but with the sincerity of the volunteers, they managed to win them over and have a very good understanding of our Tzu Chi mission. But it wasn't until 2016, Sister Kaping, a dear friend living in the same neighborhood, invited my home brother and I to Ting Si Tang at Kepong for various charity events that we began to learn more of Tzu Chi. The following year, we were persuaded to join the entrepreneur group to Taipei and Hualien. Having traveled a bit, we went along thinking it's a fun trip. Little did I know that it was a life learning and soul searching trip. The various sharing by prominent entrepreneurs and senior commissioners, visits to the hospital, the Tai Ai station, recycling center, Jing abode was mind-blowing. The four great missions of Tzu Chi was well demonstrated and articulated. It was sheer awe and amazement of the achievements of this master, which I have no inkling at that time. Of course, since then I have read about her biography. The Malaysian contingent had a great opportunity to be up close with Master on the last day at the abode. Seeing her that day was like meeting Guan Yin Posat. She embodies all the qualities and virtues that I worship in Guan Yin Posat. Her presence exudes such compassion energy that one cannot explain, but bow to her holiness. Tears just keep flowing down that day for no reason. I was speechless. Such was her inspiration and influence on me. My faith for Master and Tzu Chi was sealed thereon. Upon returning from Hualien, my home brother and I proceeded to Tianxi and Peichin without hesitation and was commissioned last year in October. Going through Tianxi and Peichin training was actually a character transforming. The activities in the training has been well thought. To have all the Tzu Chi members having the same mission, attitude to face our volunteer work or to achieve Master's ambition or mission. It is through the home visits I saw and felt the recipients' pain and suffering, wishing their sufferings will go away. Reflecting on how blessed I have been myself, I felt and urged myself to do more to help others, whether it's spending time, kind words, or simply being there. Being able to contribute, bring joys to others, and at the same time, good feeling about oneself. Through recycling, I'm more mindful of the environment protection, and preservation. Mindful of buying unnecessary and being wasteful. Trying to live simply, eat simply, and simply be myself. Going about sowing seeds of charity, be it collecting monthly contribution, fundraising through jewelry, fair or food fair, has humbled me. Recognizing I have an ego which I need to tame because it is not natural, not easy for me to ask or to request for donation. The good work done and the demeanor of all the Tzu Chi brothers and sisters are certainly an exemplary for us, an exemplary character for me to follow. They are kind, caring, gentle actions, and ever so helpful attitude are certainly inspiring to me and for me to emulate. Very感恩 to all the brothers and sisters who have helped and accompanied me on this journey. Little by little, I hope my character will be transformed to be more patient, less demanding, especially towards my home brother, my family members, and my mate. Of course, I have to have this attitude towards everyone. I'm much more willing to share and give, creating good affinity for this lifetime and life thereafter. One of the activity that that has awakened me or touched me was a trip to the leprosy center at Sungai Buloh. Upon arriving, I saw all aged and deformed leprosy patients lying on their bed. The section that I went was particularly very old folks. Looking at these patients, the impact of impermanence hit me. Also because my dad is very sick and bedridden. So I could see suffering in my dad and in all these patients. Once our bodies are incapacitated and degenerate, we are so helpless, waiting for the days to end. With no loved ones by their side, they are at the mercy of others. Was at a loss what to do when I saw them. But I saw a tub of moisturizing cream on one of the patient's table and began to apply on his arm and body. This granddad is already 90 years old and does not speak a word. I thought perhaps some cream will do his dry skin good. As I rubbed, tears well into my eyes, for I see him as my dad, who is currently very ill. And frail. That is what I normally do if I visit my dad, as I'm quite helpless as what else I can help him. So as I massaged and rubbed him, my mind went into some contemplation. I didn't realize that he was very much comforted until one of our Tzu Chi members told me that she was so touched to see what I did and how the granddad face lightened up. I was quite speechless, but suddenly it dawned on me the meaning of Ta Ai, big love by master. If we can treat others as our mom and dad, all loved ones, we are capable of giving big love to all. Love has to be all-encompassing, unconditional, and discriminate. A bodhisattva vow. Subsequently, a month later, I went back, but I couldn't see him. I didn't want to ask the hospital, where is he, for fear of knowing the truth. And I have left that doubt in my mind. Perhaps I should find out the truth, for it will liberate me from the fear. So, yes. What has guided me on all these activity? Of course, all the Dharma teachings, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the Six Paramitas, is my guide. in all my activities now, especially so my 5 consciousness and my sense conscious. I scan through the 5 senses, my mind, to find the wisdom, to see whether I can elevate myself to a higher consciousness and liberate in a sense. So my journey is long, and I'm not rushing. I would like to take baby steps, which Master may not agree. Given myself some opportunity, given myself my own capability, I shall not rush, and hopefully I will get there one day. Kanan, for listening to me. May I pass it back to Master Sister Tzu Chi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm the Yuan. Thanks for Sister copying Sister Siew King for the sharing. Just now that I heard that she know the Tzu Chi somewhere in 2004. That's when the tsunami hit in the Asia. Then only joined Tzu Chi about 2016 when Sis Cupping brought her to the entrepreneur camp. Of course, from the camp, she learned a lot, and then she can feel that there's something that's happened, and then she come back and then also join the Gen Z education, all these things. So after that, she of course doing all the the cycling activity as well. When she go for the look at the 90 years old that patient or the old man, and then really I can say that what we call it 见苦知福. If you look at the suffering, then you can know how blessed we are. And from all the activities that you have done, you have changed your attitude, and the character has transformed as well. And you know that your anger has been less, and you have less demanding as well. This is what I believe that your brother, a home brother will be, how should I say, 见证 on that, huh? Okay. Another thing is, I just now at the end, I heard that you vow and then you have the wish that is to do something that wherever master cannot reach to. Yeah, it's true, because there is a lot of beings in all the world, which sometimes master could not go to, how should I say, to understand and to give her love to them. But it's true, everyone to do all these things, okay? So I hope that all of you will really understand how Master have said that is to refrain from killing, that is to go for vegetarian. And at this moment, all of us have to be sincere pious as well. Thanks a lot, and hope everyone you will enjoy listening to the Dharma talk by the Master. Thank you.